Hi, John here, the hat guy. Sorry it's been so long since my last video, but boy, I was sick. Had the flu that knocked me down for a couple of weeks. Couldn't talk, couldn't move, just hurt to be alive. It was brutal. Don't recommend it. Lost 12 pounds. Don't recommend it as a weight loss program, though. Wow. Anyway, welcome to 2020. The year 2020. That's just so hard to imagine for me. I'm still having a hard time thinking of the year 2000, and that was 20 years ago. But I was a kid in the 70s, and remember looking forward to the year 2000 and thinking, wow, I'll be above 30 in the year 2000. And of course, that was 20 years ago. But it just seemed like so old. And now I look back on it, and 30 seems like so young. It's amazing how your perspective changes as time goes on. But I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed. Because in the 70s, when I was a kid, we were promised, through the world of science fiction, we were promised that by the year 2000, 20 years ago, we would have flying cars. And or be able to get a step on a matter transport pad and zap ourselves to somewhere else, and that we would have the solar system would be colonized. We would have people living on the moon and on Mars, and maybe out mining the asteroid belts. And we don't have any of that, and I feel somehow kind of gypped. I would like to drive to work or fly to work in my flying car. And when I get out of it in my office building, which is floating in the sky somewhere, push a button on the handle on the car, and it folds itself up into a briefcase like George Jetson used to have. And then carry it in. You don't need to worry about a parking spot. Car folds up into a briefcase that you can just carry with you. Thought we'd have something like that by now. But we don't. The car that I've got now is not remarkably different from vehicles made 50 years ago. Remarkably similar. Minor differences. Some of the more luxurious items are a little bit more commonplace than they used to be. But it's the same basic vehicle. In fact, my pickup truck, it's a base model Ford F-150 pickup truck. There's not a whole lot different from the technology of a Model T Ford. Yeah, it goes faster. It's a little bit more powerful. But it's the same basic concept. The same internal combustion engine that works basically the same as it did back then. There's been some minor advances that make it last a little longer and go a little faster and be a little bit more reliable. But it's the same thing. It's the same vehicle. That was 100 years ago. More than 100 years ago. Why have we not progressed? What's wrong with that? We landed a man on the moon in 1969. 1969. That was 50 years ago. Yet, I don't think we possess the technology today to put someone back on the moon. Yet we're talking about going to Mars. We can't even get someone into into an Earth orbit without using a Russian rocket, because we scrapped everything that worked. It's like we're moving backwards technologically, even financially. Who would have thought, when I was a kid in the 1970s, that China would be the world leader when it came to an economy? They've got more money than anybody. Who would have thought that? I certainly didn't. Nothing against the Chinese people. It's just making a point here. But all of these things that we expected to see that we don't see. And it's somewhat disappointing. Yet the world is changing, and changing dramatically. I read just this morning that the Russian government, the entire government, resigned yesterday. The entire government resigned because the president, Vladimir Putin, decided he's going to make some major changes in the Constitution. Now, I don't know if that's going to be good or bad, but clearly it's not going to be the same that it has been. And that's a country that's made some radical changes over the years. Just something that we need to be aware of. We've got hostilities in the Middle East. Of course, that's been happening since there were people in the Middle East. They've never liked each other. China wants to be the dominant world power. I read an article today about Africa is supposed to get its first superpower. Well, that's impressive. I don't remember which country it was, but it's impressive nonetheless. It's just the world is changing, and it's changing dramatically, and it's changing rapidly. The things that I took for granted as a kid are different now. When I was a kid and I wanted to make a phone call, I walked into the kitchen, because that's where the phone was, and it was mounted on the wall. And I picked it up and I dialed. I had to actually put my finger in the hole and turn the dial and let it go, and then put the second number and turn that and let it go. That was how you dialed a number. If you're under the age of 40, you've probably never seen a phone that works like that, other than in a museum. Certainly never used one. Probably wouldn't know how to if I hadn't just told you. But everything was different. We had a TV when I was a kid. We got one channel that came in really good. We had 2 or 3 channels that kind of came in depending on what the weather was like and which way the antenna was pointing. That was it. And if the president decided to get on the TV and give a State of the Union address, that's all you're going to see. Didn't matter which channel you turned it to. He was on every channel. And whatever you were going to watch, too bad, it's gone. You're not going to see it now. Now, hundreds and hundreds of channels to pick from. Yet there's nothing on worth watching. Unless you go to YouTube and watch me. But it's just so strange how things have changed. And I don't feel like I'm an old man. I am in my early 50s, but I don't feel like an old man. Yet, when I look back on the things that have changed in my life, they're pretty dramatic. And I'm assuming that the next 50 years of my life, or however long I live, will be just as dramatic. And I'm not sure I'm eager about that. When I was a kid, I would be very eager for it. Not so sure now. But we shall see, and we shall all go through it together. But I'm the hat guy, and that's my opinion. Hope everybody has a wonderful day. God bless you.